and welcome to Sam Splains the World. I'm your host, Samantha Bremekamp, and I'm here to bring you some really cool things that you can learn because I've learned them the hard way, and they'll be much easier for you. On today's episode, we will be making lavender shortbread cookies, which will include mint, lavender flowers, some lemon zest, and if you don't like any of those things, you can change it and make it whatever you want, but shortbread cookies. Here's a tip that has helped me so much. Thank you, Internet Machine, for teaching me. If you need to have softened butter, which we do for this recipe, and you're busy and you're taking butter directly from the fridge, it's gonna be hard and you can't work like that. And don't put it in the microwave or anything because you might liquefy the butter. But if you put warm water in a vessel that's big enough for the sticks of butter without overflowing, again, I've learned that the hard way, it will soften the butter for you and you'll be able to do your project like the lavender cookies in a much quicker manner. Because there have been too many times in which I have taken butter out to soften, moved on to other projects because life is busy, and then by the time I find the melted butter in my house, hopefully the kitchen, it's too late for the butter and for the project. And that's a bummer, and that's a waste. So allow me to help you not make silly mistakes that I have learned the hard way over and over again. And yes, you're gonna need a little bit more than butter in some water, but that's for the next part. Okay, the butter got softened super quickly with the warm water method. Now you'll note how easy it is for me to take it out of the wrappers. It just slides off, which is fantastic. And also note, it didn't completely melt it. You want soft butter, you don't want melted butter. This will help with the consistency. Shortbread is a little crumbly, which is great. And you want it to stay that way. And you get that by leaving the butter not completely liquid, but softened. So I'm gonna toss this out and whoa, look, just like that, all the other ingredients showed up. We have flour, we have confectioner's sugar, regular white sugar, dried mint leaves, lavender flowers, measuring cups, salt, cornstarch, and a whisk that I'm willing to take. And for those of you who grow the type of lavender that's edible, awesome. If you don't have that, don't panic. You can easily get it at the store or through the Internet Machine, or all of our hopes and dreams happen most of the time these days. But luckily this is something you're doing in real life. It's really fun and it has a super tasty ending. The one thing I don't see here is the lemon zest, which is okay. I'll grab it right now. That doesn't happen until later anyway, so don't worry about it. So sit tight because now I have butter all over my hands. Okay, so now that we have the softened butter ready and in our bowl, I'm gonna go over the rest of the ingredients for these delicious lavender shortbread cookies. Obviously you want some measuring utensils. These are really fun. This has like cup, half a cup, third of a cup, that's gonna come into play. And this measures tablespoons and teaspoons and variations of that. So you have that. Perhaps you're gonna have a whisk that you're willing to take. And for the zesting of the lemon, if you're going to include lemon in your cookies, you're gonna need a zester. So if you have a grater, you have a greater chance of having a zester already. You might be fancy and have like a separate zester, but it's the super fine, teeny tiny one. And I like to use a vegetable brush to get the zest out, which I'll show you in the zesting video right after this. Okay, let me go over what we have here. First of all, I have the 3 sticks of butter, which makes a cup and a half of butter. These just came out of the fridge, so they're hard. They're Actors Stunt Double butter for the softened butter I already have, but visually I wanted to show you what goes into this so it's easier for you. You're going to sift flour and confectioner's sugar. 2.5 cups of flour, all purpose, and 1/4 cup of the confectioner's sugar. Why do you need to be a little sifty? You don't want to have a surprise kind of take you out of your awesome cooking or baking. Nobody likes a cooking surprise like that. it's just safer and easier, and so that the texture is the same throughout, I highly recommend sifting. If you don't sift, the good news is the sifting police have become defunct, so no one's gonna come after you for not sifting your flour or confectioner sugar. I'm just showing you and teaching you the best possible way that I have learned that has worked for me. So take what you will from it and, you know, experiment, because cooking is science, and in science we experiment, and it's the best. Okay, you're gonna have 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. I'm a big fan of pink Himalayan salt. I love the flavor, and also it's pink. So you're going to zest a lemon. I knew I had one right there. And you're gonna use your zester, and you'll see that in the video next. A teaspoon. Yeah, it's kind of annoying to try to measure a teaspoon of zested lemon. You could ballpark it. You could do it by how much lemon flavor you want or don't want. That's like not a big issue if you use a little bit too much or a little bit too little, as long as you're okay with that flavor combination coming out. You're going to use 2/3 of a cup of granulated white sugar. You're going to use 1/2 cup of cornstarch, the 1.5 cups of butter that we soften with the water method that I talked about, 2 tablespoons of finely chopped lavender or lavender flowers. I like lavender flowers. I just think they're really pretty. I love the flavor they give. And the ones that I have purchased are for cooking. I grow lavender also, and I dry that out for different things. There are lots of varieties. Most of them are completely edible. Just check ahead of time, safety first. You want to be super sure, and then serve these at your house and have people not feel well because of something you could have easily avoided. And mint. You might even grow mint. Mint is great. It's super easy to grow. Make sure it's in a container because it's invasive and will take over. And although I love mint, and I grow like mojito mint and all the different varieties, I love to have different types of mint for different things. My neighbors might not love the mint, so I'm never putting it into the ground, because then you're battling mint forever because it grows underground and is really hard to kill. So keep that in mind. You can also just buy it dried. The recipe calls for fresh mint, but I have used dry mint because it's winter. You could try to get fresh mint from the grocery store like we did the basil. That's your call. But you're gonna use a tablespoon of fresh mint, or you could use a little less of dry mint or more. I happen to love mint, so I'm gonna put in more of it. But that's just, you know, because I like that taste. Obviously you have your mixing bowl where all of this goes in, and you have a whisk you're willing to take. So I will use this to try to break it down with the butter first before getting my hands super into it. And because I am weak, I will use a standing mixer after I've done enough of this with my hand to make it crumbly. I'll then put it in the mixer with an attachment, which you'll see, that has like the rubber side that really scrapes the side of the bowl. I just love it. We have it, so I'm very fortunate. If you don't have it, not a big deal. I've made these without it for years. It doesn't change the consistency or like make it better or worse. It's just because I'm lazy and I have something that I can use. But that's it. That's all you need. A few simple ingredients to create a delicious cookie that you're gonna love, and so will other people. So figure out a good place to hide them. I mean, now on to the much anticipated lemon zesting segment of this Lavender Shortbread episode of Sam Explains the World. These are the instruments I'm going to use. A bowl, a lemon, a grater that has a zesting part of it, and this vegetable brush to then get the zest from the grater that's going to want to adhere to into the bowl. You might have a microplaner, or if you want more lemon and you're cool with bigger chunks that you'll be eating, you can use something like this. But I recommend the zester, the tiniest hole. So if you look at all the sides of your really great grater and you find the teeny tiny one, That's what you're gonna need. You're going to pick a lemon and you're going to get zesty with it. It's super easy. You'll realize not a lot is falling off into the bowl yet, which is why I'm using the vegetable brush, because I found that that is the best way to get the lemon zest off of the zester without me harming myself, which, by the way, huge fan of. Baking and cooking should be fun. You shouldn't be constantly hurting yourself. You should be figuring out ways in which to do things without getting hurt. And or just watch my episodes in which I figured out how to do things after having done them the painful way. Make sure your surface is clean too, because the zest is going to go everywhere. Some in the bowl, some around the bowl. But because I anticipated it, I made sure the working surface was super, super clean, so that in a second I can just add everything that didn't make it into the bowl all around it, can join its friends. So good. Now I'm going to do the inside part. You see inside. Oh, that lemon, you don't want to lose it. Zest is like the essence. You might be like, why don't I just use lemon juice? It might be too much. Unless you're super into it, then you can certainly add it if you know that you want it more lemony than anything else. And you can make your own songs. One man Sam band. Okay. That's enough of that for you having to listen to me do that. And then make sure you get the zest off your brush or whatever you use. Try not to use your fingers. You get hurt that way. Okay. And that's it. That's the amount you need. You don't need more than that. Unless you're super into lemons, then you do as much as you want. Okay, I've mixed together our ingredients by hand, and I've grown tired, and I'm very lucky because I have a standing mixer that I get to utilize. So I'm going to transfer this that I had started making crummy, as in full of crumbles, not like it's not a delightful thing, you know, because words matter. And I'm putting it in the standing mixer. I'm then going to bring you with me to watch this mix because it is delightful. Okay, I've put the bowl in the standing mixer. I would like to point out that my partner is incredible and added wheels to the bottom of this. If you have a standing mixer, you know how heavy it is and how much of a beast it is to move around the kitchen. But if you have the smarts, you can look up and find teeny tiny ball bearings that can go underneath it to make it super easy to slide. With that said, it's going to move a little bit, so you can't really walk away too far. It might try to follow you if it misses you. Note that I'm using this accessory. I like this rubber part to really scrape the sides. I'm going to close it. I'm going to lock it, which is super important. And I'm going to start on slow because I don't want it to get too crazy. There is movement. It's important to make sure the bowl is locked. It's important to make sure this is locked. And since it's on wheels, it moves a little bit. Not too much, but still. Keep an eye on it. It's going to have a mind of its own. Notice the crumbles are starting to get more situated with themselves, more comfortable in their own new skin. Look how great that scraper is, getting all the dough off the side. It's just about ready for me to manhandle it, or as I should say, Sam handle it, before putting it into the fridge. I'm now going to scrape it off back into the bowl before going back over to a nice, clean, flat surface, in which I'm going to press it together into a ball in cling wrap. Get it nice and snug and put it in the fridge for it to hang out and think about what it's done. And let it get super excited about its future as delicious lavender shortbread cookies. So now that you have your lavender shortbread mixture all together, happy, mixed up, whether you did it by hand or with a standing mixer. You're now going to use some form of cling wrap, and you're going to pour the dough over it, and we're going to squish it into a ball consistency. Okay, come on, friend. Make it into like a little bit of a ball, I'll show you, and then we'll flatten it down into about an inch consistency before putting it into the fridge. Oh, okay. Make sure I don't want to waste anything. If you do, it's totally okay. I'll just have to move on with my life. Okay. Super easy. Again, if you don't like touching things and you like hate stuff getting on your hands, you could just kind of surround this with a saran wrap and do it like that. But like, no, there's like not anything coming off onto my hands. And it kind of feels nice. Brings you back to playing with Play-Doh or clay or what have you. Okay. Now I'm going to tightly wrap the shortbread. It's in the ball. I'm gonna like push it into like the 1 inch-ish form before placing it in the fridge for it to chill out. Just be happy with its new life. It looks so pretty. Okay, good enough. Doesn't have to be perfect because you're gonna be taking a rolling pin to this anyway and putting it into a sheet, which I'll show you next. But there you go, don't eat it yet. Spend some time with it, get to know it, or put it aside into the fridge and come back to it when you're ready to put this on a sheet and roll it out, which we are about to do. So get excited. We're getting closer to the most important part, being able to eat what you've made. Or sharing it, if you're into that, that's your choice. You're in charge. Okay, so we had our dough in the fridge. We wanted it to get a little bit firmer so it'll be easier to manipulate. If it's too loosey-goosey, it's not gonna hold up, and then the lavender shortbread is not gonna turn out the way we want to after cooking it. So I'm going to throw some flour down. I'm using a different flour. This is like the bag from the grocery store. You can use any kind of flour you want, but this is the one I use to do this because I get so messy with it. And I am lightly flouring this pan so that the lavender shortbread cookies come off super easily when it's time. And I don't know about you, but when something is done baking or cooking and you smell it, and you've been smelling it for so long, you don't want anything coming between you and getting to that delicious thing. Even the edges, make sure you do that. And yes, it's gonna get messy, and it's super, super worth it. Okay. You have it on your hands like a gymnast, but it's important so that when you're manipulating the dough, it doesn't get stuck to you. Taking off the cling wrap. Beautiful consistency. I'm gonna put it in and I'm gonna roll it out. Now, if you have a rolling pin, awesome. I have found that the rolling pin does not fit this pan that I like to use. The recipe that I use, I found on the internet machine, and it wants you to roll it out to like 1/4 of an inch. I'm not gonna take out a ruler. You can if you're super into it, but I have found that my salt and pepper shaker fits this pan perfectly. So that's what I'm gonna use to roll it out. I have tightly wrapped it in cling wrap, saran wrap, whatever, so that it doesn't like gunk up the salt and pepper shaker, because I'm just utilizing this for the shortbread to roll it out. And then it'll go back at its home. And I want it to feel good about itself, you know? I don't want to mess it up and have it feel sad. Also, it would be such a pain to try to clean that out. If you guys have the salt and pepper shakers that you then like grind, that you feel like you're at a fancy restaurant, those are awesome, but not something that you want to be cleaning on a regular basis. If you can help it. Okay. So you might find that when you take the dough out of the fridge, it might be a little too hard for you to manipulate. Or maybe you're someone who does lots of like weightlifting or whatever, and you're super strong, then you can just be laughing at my weakness, and that's totally cool too. But if you're like me and realize that you aren't Hercules in this specific incident, You can just let it sit out for a little bit until it's soft enough for you to manipulate. But if you forget about it and it gets super soft, you'll probably have to toss it back in the fridge. Which honestly, there are worse things to deal with. I'm gonna keep rolling this out, but I just wanted to show you, I'm doing it this way, and then I'm going to cut it. I like to have it in like rectangular shapes, and I'll poke it, and I'll show you that too, with a toothpick. I'm going to cut the lines with this dough knife. But you might want to do something fun and like use cookie cutters, especially if you're working with kids, or if it's like for spring and you have like flower cookie cutters, or you know, you just love shapes, hearts, whatever. I do love my Ninja Bread men, but those would be gigantic shortbread cookies. And for me, shortbread cookies should be like, you know, 1 inch by 2 inches. It doesn't have to be exact. I'm just letting you know how I like it. But you can do it however you want it. So you definitely want to make sure that the consistency, the depth, if you will, the thickness, however you like to say these things, is the same throughout. Because of cooking, you don't want one part to get overcooked while another part is undercooked. That's annoying and will ruin your batch. But you know, there are worse things. If that's the case, then just cut around and take off the part that's already super cooked, which would probably be the outside, and then, you know, put the inside back in for a couple more minutes. There are always things that you can do to try to salvage things. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. You can have a good cry regardless. It's just really good for you. But if that's the case, I want you to know, don't panic. It'll be okay. Okay. So as I make sure it's exactly 1/4 of an inch by using my wits, I'm also pulling it away from the edges a little bit to help shape it. But that's just what I want to do. Okay, after I do that, I'm gonna pop it back in the fridge for just a couple minutes because it's been sitting out now as I'm doing this and it's getting soft. Just a recommendation, something I've learned the hard way. You don't necessarily have to do it, but I feel like the consistency will hold up better. It'll be stronger when you put it in the oven. I'll be right back. With this hitting every corner of the pan, and together we're gonna slice it up. Okay, now that we have the lavender shortbread dough all even in the pan, I'm going to cut rows, and then I'm going to take my toothpick and make little holes. It just helps with the consistency. You might be used to it when you buy shortbread and you see like that. Do you necessarily have to do it? You can do it whatever you want. I just think it comes out better, in my opinion, for when I'm eating these. I mean, for when I'm sharing them with other people, obviously. I'm going to use a dough cutter for my lines. I just really like the size, the heft, and it's super easy. You could try to use other things, or you can use the cookie cutters like I said earlier, but okay. So I'm going to try to make them about 1 inch-ish wide. You could certainly use a ruler should you want to be more precise, but I'm not trying to put these into a contest, so I'm not going to do it. So first I'll go across, and then I'm going to do about 2 inches the long way. They're so light, I feel like it's okay to go 2 inches. Obviously, if it was something else, depending on how flavorful or dense, then maybe I would make them smaller. But they're going to be about this size. They're going to go all the way through. You don't have to be stuck here watching that part of it. I'm just getting you started and showing you what's going to happen. And now I'm going to do the toothpick poke, and I'm going to do, I'm just going to do 2 rows of pokes through these cookies. They smell so good already. I know you're going to want to just eat them. I get it. But you should probably definitely wait until they are cooked. They kind of look like dominoes with this whole structure. And I'm kind of doing these willy-nilly because I don't think it matters. But if you are hosting somebody super important, like a mother-in-law or what have you, and you want to make sure they come out perfectly, grab that ruler, girlfriend or boyfriend, and get busy measuring and making sure everything's perfect. But in my experience, things that look super perfect in the baking world don't ever taste as good as those that kind of look like a little funky. Maybe that's just because that's how things that I make come out, or because people get super, super obsessive over it being absolutely perfect looking, that it can be on a magazine cover. They kind of forget the importance of taste. Anyway, I'm going to finish this. I'm going to pop it in the oven that's already been preheated to 325. I know that because I put the thermometer that's analog inside, so I can visually see exactly the temperature inside, despite what the screen tells me, because they don't match up. Hopefully yours does, and that's awesome. Definitely figure it out though, because if you've been cooking in your stove or oven and things don't come out exactly the way that they're supposed to, like you're trying to make pizza or bread or cookies or what have you, it's probably not you. And that's the great thing about figuring it out. You just need a little gadget that you can get from a mom and pop hardware store that you put in your oven to tell you exactly the temperature inside. Because it's science and magic, but mostly baking is science, and that's important. Okay, so now the Lavender Shortbread cookies have had their time in the oven after I figured out exactly how to get it to 325 inside. I'm going to put on my super fashionable, sometimes I just wear these out in the world, silicone heat protectors, but you use whatever you have outside of your bare hands because it's hot. We don't want that to happen. So let's take out our friend. It smells amazing. It smells so, so good. Gosh, they look great. Lightly brown around the edges, cooked evenly, smells amazing. Now's the hard part because I have to wait for them to cool before I can start feasting on them. But then I'll bring you back and give you a nice send-off. If you take them out and you realize that they're not done yet, great news. Put them back in for a little bit longer. You know, it's not an exact science when you're using things that are out of your control. So you just do the best you can. And if I can do it, you can do it. You probably do it a little bit better than me too. So thanks for stopping by for this part. After all of that hard work, we have finally made it to the good part in which I can now touch this because it's no longer hot. And yes, I tested that before I hit record. Please don't burn yourself. And I'm going to plate them and sample them. I think it's very important that you sample a whole roll. That way, you know what your guests, your loved ones are going to be eating. It's just really important to test your own product if you're baking cookies or cakes or whatever. These are so, so good. And whatever variation you make, whatever you add to it, if you're not into lavender or mint or whatever, at least the shortbread consistency is going to be perfect. Flaky, delicious. It holds up. I'm going to plate some of this, maybe give some of it away. Save some of it. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's practically healthy for you because it has lavender, lemon, and mint. Or if you don't like it, you don't have to put lemon zest. Or if you only like lavender and not mint, don't put mint. You are your own creator in the kitchen, and that is one of my favorite parts about experimenting. Not only am I finding out how to do things an easier way for you, but you can play around with flavors and try some things that you maybe wouldn't have thought would be great and end up being like your new favorite thing. Get crazy. It's science, it's baking, it's fun. Whatever you do, enjoy it because somebody else will. So make sure to test that row first. Before I go make out with the rest of these, thank you for stopping by for this episode of Sam Explains the World Lavender Shortbread edition.